Hey, now it's the Rob from 1061 KISS FM here with my 16-bit colleague.
Hey guys, it's Steve, web contributor to 1061evansville.com, and me and Rob were both there when the Game Boy became the Game Man.
We were both there becoming game men with the game men with the Game Boy.
Yes.
So once again, the best dressed podcast on the internet. I don't care what anybody tells me. Today we're going to talk about an aspect of video games that oftentimes gets overlooked. It is in my opinion, Steve, that video games here in the 21st century are the supreme storytelling method.
Yes.
I feel you can convey a story with a video game more intimately and better than you can with film, than you can with music, than you can with literature. I believe that video games are the supreme storytelling method.
Yes, basically because the time frame is whatever you want to devote to it.
But it's like when you're watching a movie and a character has an obstacle to overcome, you watch them do it passively.
Yes.
In a video game, you become that character through your hands, through the controller. It becomes your problem. It becomes your feelings. You become scared,
Yes.
not just scared for somebody else or whatever, as an example.
Yes.
They're capable of giving you all sorts of emotions. You can be happy. You can cry. And, of course, one thing that you can do is laugh at video games.
Yes.
There are some very, very funny, comedical and just downright brilliant video games and designers that make very funny video games.
There are.
There's a lot of them. So what, Steve, do you think are some of the funniest video games to have ever come out?
Okay. When we first brought this topic up, I know you came up with the topic. When we first thought about this, I was thinking there are games out there like Mario Party where things happen and you laugh. Mm-hmm. But a video game that just really makes you laugh. I've got a few.
I've got a bunch too.
Yeah, one I want to mention is like South Park's Chef's Love Shack.
Oh, I have Chef's Love Shack, but I've never played it.
Oh, it's very good. I mean, it's the South Park take on like a game show game.
Okay.
But I mean, definitely if you enjoy their humor is there. And that's one, I definitely wanted to mention.
South Park has an entry on my list too. Have you ever played The Stick of Truth?
I have not played that.
Must play. It is hysterical, and it is so true to the source material that is South Park.
Yes.
If you're a fan of South Park, this will play like one long episode or one long movie of South Park, and all the humor is exactly what you're looking for. It is super edgy.
Yes.
It is very edgy, and I know your sense of humor, and you'll like it. Get your hands on it, please. Yes. I'm begging you.
Speaking of edgy, Conker's Bad Fur Day.
I've never played that one, but I've heard it's very funny, including a monster made out of poop.
Yes.
Please, fill me in on this.
He actually will sing a poop song to you. I was working at Blockbuster Video, the now defunct company, when this game came in I knew nothing about. And of course I took it home, where it proceeded to stay at my home for the next month. You play as an alcoholic squirrel. Basically, you're going through solving puzzles, finding things like you would in any storytelling game, but his objective is to get back to see his girlfriend. And that's what's driving this character through this game. And it's surreal, it's very adult-oriented. It had poor marketing, it should have been huge.
Right.
But
I've only heard of it. I've seen it around, but I've never actually played it.
If you can find a copy of it, I definitely recommend you playing it.
Okay. And do you have any more you want to mention, or is that about it?
I got a couple more. Shrek 2 on GameCube.
Never played it.
It's really good. It's where you're the characters, but it's kind of the exchange between other characters. It literally made me laugh out loud.
Huh.
And
the movies are funny enough.
Yes. I definitely recommend that. And I had another one on my list, and I'm drawing a blank now. So if you want to go ahead and name some of yours,
I've got a bunch here. If I had to give the gold medal for funniest games of all time, games that are written funny, intended to be funny, I feel like a lot of them actually excelled on the PC, on the computers. The gold medal is going to Leisure Suit Larry.
Okay.
Tell me you know who that is.
I've heard of it. I've never played it.
Leisure Suit Larry was the closest thing to an X-rated video game you could ever play. But this was back, and I'm talking in back like the the late 80s, early 90s, when you could see a boob, but it wasn't. It's just a bunch of pixels.
Yes.
But the games where I remember I got in trouble for playing the game as a young boy. I remember I learned about things. I learned a lot about sex from Leisure Suit Larry. I learned about things like foreplay. I learned about the word prophylactic from Leisure Suit Larry. And there's so many games. The recent ones, like the ones on consoles, stay away from. But the first 5 or 6 computer games, yes. Hysterical, edgy, funny, and sexy. So it's almost like Leisure Suit Larry. John Lovitz on Saturday Night Live when he'd be with Tom Hanks and they'd be like, hitting on girls, like, oh yeah, check her out. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
That's kind of who Leisure Suit Larry was. I know you might not be familiar with some of these games because they're on the PC, but have you ever heard of The Secret of Monkey Island?
Again, I've heard of it, never played it.
They are hysterically funny, and also like the Leisure Suit Larry games, these are point-and-click adventure games. Where back in the day you had to type in open door on the computer and it would open. And eventually it'd be a point-and-click with the mouse and you could right-click and open the door or whatever. Those games, among my favorites of all time, every single one of them faithful to the one before it and just as funny. Have you ever heard of Maniac Mansion?
I've played that one.
Okay, its sequel, Day of the Tentacle, is also one of the funniest video games of all time.
Wow.
It's known as a sequel that outlived its original, and you know how deeply I regard the original game. Maniac Mansion, like one of my top 3 NES games of all time. Which, by the way, all those games that I mentioned above, well, at least Maniac Mansion, Day of the Tentacle, and Monkey Island, those are all Tim Schafer games, who is in charge of Double Fine now. And if you ever see a game made by Double Fine, buy it. They're all very, very funny, usually adventure games that I just love. So let's talk about, ever play Sam and Max?
Yes.
They're not great, but they're kind of funny. They try. Sometimes they fail, but they're kind of funny. I thought Mortal Kombat sometimes would eventually mix in some humor, especially in the second and third games with the friendships and the babalities and the animalities. I like them because while they might not be laugh out loud funny, they're genres that don't ever have laughs in them.
Yeah.
Any fighting game doesn't have laughs in it until Mortal Kombat came along. That's the only game still pretty much that can make you laugh at it.
Yeah, definitely.
I like that. And if you want to go back to like the 8-bit days of the Nintendo, old games that were funny include games like Battletoads. Did you ever play Battletoads?
Have you?
I mean, it's like, again, the Nintendo days, they would have a hard time getting belly laughs out of you like you can now.
Yeah.
They don't have voice acting and cinematics, but goofy games where, your toads come to life and, the way they beat each other up. I always thought that was a funny game. And another one I wanted to mention was Toe Jam and Earl.
Okay.
From the 16-bit Sega Genesis. I always loved the name Toe Jam as a character, but also the things that would happen in the game were chuckle-inducing. Again, it was tough to get belly laughs back in those days, but Toe Jam and Earl came the closest as far as I'm concerned. And then one more series I want to mention, you'll probably agree with me, I know you like these games, also not like rolling on the floor funny, but the Lego games,
Yes.
they have a whole lot of, family-oriented jokes inside of them, and some that even go over the kids' heads. And if you know, like, the source material of what they're talking about, if you know, like, if you're playing Lego Indiana Jones and you know the Indiana Jones movies really well, there's some jokes for you in there, too.
Yes.
So I like that.
Yes, definitely.
So that was my list.
I thought of the last one I wanted to mention was Rayman's Raging Rabbids.
Oh, okay. I played some of those games.
This was for the Wii, and this was billed as the first game you could play with your butt.
How did you play with your butt?
And you use the balance board that's usually for like the Wii Sports.
Right, okay.
But you slide, one of the games in general that you use that for, you slide down a hill on like a wild boar or a pig as one of these rabbit characters. And it's just one of those crazy over the top. Normally I think those characters are a little annoying.
Yes.
But this game works for it.
I have one Rabbids game and I think it sucks, but I know that they are taking that stab at humor, so that's a good choice. If we missed any of your favorite funny games, leave us a comment. And of course, we will be back next week with another edition of the 16-Bit Superstars. So for myself, the Rob, and for Steve.
Thanks, guys.